justice and social justice and environmental justice, and all of a sudden everything has a different adjective, and we get these this non-exhaustive list of specific types of justices or violences. You got domestic violence and sexual violence and firearm violence and all sorts of things, right? So racial violence. And I want to spend some time here because I really appreciate that you've pulled the lens back and said violence is what needs to be addressed. And I've got some opinions about this because it's what I do for a living. But I want to hear your idea on how you conceptualize violence, its origins, and I mean really, really broadly, because the listening audience is going to specify it in their own ears just by listening, and how we go about solving it. You've obviously got one avenue, and there are many others, but help the listening audience understand your perspective on what violence is and how we tackle it.
Violence, in the overall kind of the macro view, violence is uncontrolled nature, right? So it is natural for us as humans to hurt things. I mean, we'll kill for our meat, right? But that's survival. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we will hurt each other, but it's uncontrolled. It's not natural to do that thing. So I believe now when you look at how violence is promoted in the country, violence is almost, depending on where you are, I mean, you can say this is from military service all the way down to pick a city. Violence is almost like a strike of honor at this point. It's kind of like, you resorted to violent measures, then you are the man or you are the woman. So I think violence is, not only is it uncontrolled nature, it's also kind of like a badge of honor, I should say. It's like something you need to validate your existence now. So people resort to it so easy because it is the thing that they have. I also like to say that people resort to violence, and I have this kind of philosophy. And it kind of ties into guns, but it's still dealing with violence overall. It could be a knife, brick, bat, car, whatever. I call it the black powder syndrome. So the black powder, like gun propellant, gunpowder that's in a shell casing. Black powder, and what is that? Well, think about it. Every single human being, despite who they are, innately wants to be respected. They want their opinion to be valued. They want it to be treated fairly. Like you're just kind of just born with that. Like you want that. Well, with the lack of education around this country, and with the devices that are used for division around this country, so you don't have a lot of people that feel like their voices are valued or that they can articulate the fact that they should be valued or respected in a certain way. So whether it's, I've been taught that this whole side of the country sucks, and then when I go talk to them, they don't listen to me, so that ticks me off. Whether it's the kid in school that can't get the cool kids to talk to him and interact with him, he wants to be valued, that ticks him off. Whether it's the guy that tries to go in and get a job, and because he doesn't know how to articulate himself, people don't respect him. Maybe he didn't graduate from high school, so he's ticked off because nobody respects him. You try to have a conversation with someone in the street, and they're using words you don't understand, and they look back at you and laugh when you don't get it. Even when you misspell something on social media now, people are reminding you how dumb you are. Like everybody is always trying to devalue the person. Well, that goes against what we want naturally. So when individuals pick up something, right? So an example would be this, and it's just one of many. I have went around and I have tried to ask this employer for a position for X amount of years. And they always laugh at me. I'm never good enough. I'll never get the position. I got my friends in my neighborhood reinforcing that. And so I can't get the things that I would get because I want to work hard. I want to be respected, and I want to do right. Well, I ask you for something paying me $15 an hour. I can't get it out of you. All right? I ask you for your respect. I can't get it out of you. But if I pick up something that you understand can cause harm, and I threaten you with it, well, you'll give me everything in your pocket. Oh, so now you'll give me money. Oh, now I'm served. Oh, now you're looking at me with respect. Oh, now you value what I have to say because you understand there's an immediate consequence if you don't. Oh, so violence will make you conform to what I naturally want. Okay, cool. I'm going to resort to violence to get what I want out of you because I innately want that. I desire that. And when people don't get it and they see that violence makes others conform, they'll resort to it as a means to feed their internal desires. And that's why I think kind of a big macro level where the issues are coming from. So that's how I kind of feel about it.
So we can take that and apply it to things like, you hear people saying, well, words are violence now. That's stupid. But they can be, because if you pick up nasty words and use them against somebody to get their respect or their attention, it's valid. It's legit. That actually works. When I mock somebody, or when I pester them to the point that I push them into responding even though they may not want to respond, that's a form of leveraging violence. So why is this bad? I mean, I'm going to pretend that we don't already inherently know that it's bad. Why is this bad? And then how do we cure it? Because we're not going to stop people from picking up an object or some other tool to leverage violence to get their respect. How do we change the narrative, change the culture, so that we're not perpetrating violence upon each other anymore?
I think that, and it might sound a little soft, but it's just something we should all do. I think that we need to remind our fellow man about their value, about who they are, about how special they can be.
Amen.
About how, and that's what we need to do. So instead of mocking the guy that misspells words all the time, pull him to the side. Like, hey, man, I've noticed this. Can I help you? Hey, there's this guy over here that, I see that he's, not making, great wages and he's struggling. Instead of mocking him or you pulling up in your, $80,000 car, just like, oh, yeah, one day you'll be here. Ask them, hey, what are you trying out? Like, spend a few minutes and just help them invest in themselves. Sometimes, some things that we take for granted can be life-changing for another individual, right? If you just simply say, hey, just to let you know, I was driving by the local church, and they're having a men's group there today. And I see that, man, you just haven't been looking happy lately. Let's go to the men's group together. Like, that moment to you just might be an hour and a half out of your day hanging out at the church, but to that individual, you could have just changed their lives. So instead of mocking or making fun or ignoring your fellow man, spend a few minutes a week even, and just give back and help them understand that they can achieve higher value levels in their life. And if we can all do that, if we took 300 million people and we were all focused on doing that in this country, then we can probably start knocking down violence, a few hundred people at a time, just because we're reminding them how valuable and special they are. And once you build a relationship with somebody, now granted, we can get into the whole domestic situations and stuff, but realistically, once you build a relationship with someone based off camaraderie and respect, the likelihood of them ever coming to hurt you is going to be very low. So if we can just do that across the board, I think that'll fix a lot, just being kind to each other.
I agree. Adding value to people, and if you can't add value, noticing the value that somebody already possesses, right? Because we all inherently possess value. So if we can just point that out to one another, I think that's a great, very, very simple, practical, everyday solution that literally everybody listening can do. We can do that everywhere. Workplace, home environment, and then even strangers. I love that. Thank you for that. That's a really cool perspective. How are you doing on time? Do you have 15 or 20 more minutes?
Oh, yeah, I'm good.
So I want to shift gears, because you really brought some illumination to me when we were chatting about race relations in America, and it was through the context of this notion that all gun control is racist. And that was something that I'd maybe vaguely heard at some point in my life. But then you really brought it home, and you kicked it off by telling me about Black Wall Street. But there was other things that have gone on historically in America that we don't get taught in history books. That was a real eye-opener for me. Black Wall Street, I'd never heard about that before. And so I want you to share that with the listening audience, because ever since then I've gone to many people in my life. I'm like, hey, have you ever heard of Black Wall Street? And I just get, trout-faced blank stares. And I was like, you gotta listen to Katie talk about this. And of course, you're not in my hip pocket, so I can't. But now, if you put it on the podcast, I can. But then I also want you to share some of the other stories that are really impactful that I guess undergird what we know about race relations today in America that maybe folks haven't heard about simply because they've been washed from the texts or whatever, overlooked, ignored. I'm just going to pause there and let you start talking, because this is really fascinating.
Okay, no problem. So as far as race goes in this country, especially when it comes to gun, like all gun control is racist, I'll start there. A lot of people say it because it's an immediate shield against gun control, right? You throw out the word racism, people just stop.
Yeah, it has a chilling effect, yeah.
Yeah, like, what do I do? Am I racist now? So they just stop. But it's deeper than that. It's not just a phrase. It really is. So, and I'll make it brief. When you go back to the history of this country, slave codes, if you will, they go by different names: slave codes, black codes, depending on what part of the colonies at the time you were in. These were codes that were written, various codes that cover various things that governed slaves. All right, not Native Americans. They governed slaves. The slaves had to adhere to these different rules. When it comes to firearms, the slave codes were very clear that if a black was caught with anything that could be used as a weapon outside of their work, like if you're working in the fields, that's acceptable. But if you're caught in a non-working manner with anything that can be used or can misconstrued as a weapon, a white person could kill you on the spot and be perfectly justified in doing so. You were not allowed to have anything. And they used, in one of the laws, it actually used a cane as a reference. Like you couldn't have a cane. So, because it could be used as a weapon, and, it's one object. So they would kill you for having it if you couldn't explain why you had it. So when gun control, when things expanded and the country started to evolve, say you even get to 1776 when, we had the big war and here we are, America fought for its freedom. Now we're actually a country instead of a bunch of colonies. Well, a lot of people with 1776, when you look at the gun community, which is great. I'm not demeaning this. I'm just bringing out the facts. 1776 is awesome. When you look at it from a historical basis, like we wouldn't be able to have this podcast right now if things were different, right? But it's to be valued. However, in 1776, America did indeed gain its freedom. We started a big piece of paper, kind of an important thing in Philly, and everything's great. Well, even today, everybody celebrates 1776, and that is fine, but they just don't celebrate or understand the things that surround it. So in 1776, America was free from Britain, but I still was not free from America. Mm-hmm. Gun control was amplified. So when America got its freedom, and we got the Constitution, and then we had Amendment 2, or the Second Amendment, whatever you feel comfortable with, that was written for white men. And you could argue maybe women, but definitely white men, but not black people at all. It was not meant for us. So when you look at the different things like the Army-Navy laws and Jim Crow and stuff like that, they always have restrictions on us owning firearms. Different states wrote different things. If you take the state of Tennessee, I believe it was 1865, if I'm not mistaken. Tennessee ratified its state constitution and I'm paraphrasing at this point, that the right to keep and bear arms is for all free men. It ratified the state constitution in 1865 to say the right to keep and bear arms is for all white men. Like they had to add that in just to be clear, because the freedom of guns was not for black people. So when you look at the laws that were put in the books and you look at those things, then it is fundamentally factual that gun control was meant for blacks, thus, and for evil intent. And thus, racism, evil intent, oppressing of people, gun control is racist. And it is. At its roots, it truly is. Even when you fast forward to some of the other minute gun policies like carry permits and training. Well, if you look at a impoverished area where a family might be negative in their disposable income, but in order for them to survive in this area, they want a firearm. Well, you don't make education and information easy for them. Like take St. Louis, for example. Fortunately, a beautiful city, but a very violent city. Okay, number one in murder for like the last 6-7 years running per capita. All right, there is not a gun range in St. Louis City. Hasn't been in years. Well, where do people go get their information and education about gun rights and gun laws? When they're living in these areas, they want to know how to protect themselves. Well, where do they go get the education? You took the education from them. They're not allowed to go seek it out. Then you charge them permit fees for their constitutional right. A permit fee in a suburban area where, say, the average home income between two adults is $120,000, but when you come down to these areas, that same income might be $24,000, right? So that extra couple of $100 for a constitutional right of theirs hurts. And then that's not including the fact that they'll have to go out, find a trainer, and pay the trainer. So now and then they got to buy the firearm. So that, let's call it $800 turnaround time could be 2 to 3 years worth of savings for a lot of families. Now, what can happen to someone in 2 or 3 years while they're living in one of the most violent cities in the country?
Lots.
Right? Yeah. So it is a way to keep people systematically oppressed. And the all the permits and the restrictions these states are putting down are all forms of gun control. So